What's up, everyone? Kevin Allen here, aka The Geek. And today we're breaking down the DFS Army Domination Station Optimizer for PGA. And this video I'm actually going to twist in a little bit of connection between the optimizer and our PGA research station because there are some tie-ins here on screen, but let's start with the basics. So PGA is offered by DraftKings, FanDuel, and Fantasy Draft. You have options to select any of these three. You choose your site, choose the sport, golf, and choose the slate. This week happens to be the Waste Management Phoenix Open, so we'll take a look at that. And interestingly, PGA is a really simple sport for optimization purposes, but there are some twists that we've added onto the Domination Station and some real conveniences that you can take advantage of when making anywhere from 1 to 150 lineups. For the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to set the number of lineups to 25 here. But before we get to that, here are the basics. Salary range, this should pretty much not be messed with unless you want to completely avoid the cheapest salary golfers in your lineups. In general, though, I would not use that, but this is a filter that removes players that aren't between the range of $6,000 to $11,400 in salary, and this generally will be the lowest to highest price unless you move it. Fantasy points range, this is another filter that can remove golfers here that are below a certain number. So you see as I slide it up, I don't want anybody projected for that low. It will exclude certain numbers of the golfers. Again, for the purpose of this demo, we're not going to mess with that. Salary cap, again, not something I'm really going to use, but if you were inclined to, say, want to generate lineups that were slightly below the max salary cap for whatever reason, maybe to avoid ties, you can do that by lowering this slider right here. And this is where you set the number of lineups. You can use it as a slider, or you can just type the number in. Here we have some basic settings, optimal versus tournament mode. I've explained this many times, but tournament mode is what you should pretty much always use, and it works with your max exposure limits to spread exposure to any players that are in your lineups that you set a max exposure limit to. It will spread them across the entire, in this case, 25 lineups that we generate, rather than just in the first 30% of lineups generated. I hope that makes sense. Right here you have the number of uniques per lineup. So in a volatile sport like PGA, you might use a higher number like 3 or 4, but this will essentially diversify your lineups by making sure that each lineup has 4 players that are different from the lineup before generated, or any lineup that had been generated previously. So they will never have, they'll be forced to not have more than, not have those 4 players in common. You could set it to 3, 2. This setting at 1, the standard, means that, each lineup generated, the next one will just generally swap out 1 player, or it is only forced to swap out 1 player. It might swap out more just because that's what the projections dictate. Now, finally, DFS Army points and DFS Army grades. So golf is a pretty unique sport, and we allow to optimize by points or by grade. I'm going to show you where the grades come from. Points are our baseline projection for these golfers. Grades are actually generated slightly differently, and I'm going to show you the DFS Army research station so you could take a quick look at how this works. This is the Stat Cruncher, which is essentially a function of our research station, and this will weight various statistics on a 100-point basis. So the weight is out of 100, and here you can see the standard for these grades, 15 points to the win odds, or the odds of this particular golfer finishing top 20. Field rank last 15, field rank last 25, last year. So various rankings based on recent, little more in-depth of past year, made cut percentage, driving distance, all the various and important stats for PGA. And you could look at a course and say, you know what, shots gained tee to green is really, really important here. So you might want to raise up the weighting of some of one versus another, and you can actually adjust the the ratings. These are how the ratings are generated. You as the users can make adjustments and change them, but essentially that is our system and our pros setting up their weightings for these various statistics, and these are customized to every course. So you can actually optimize by grades or by points, and however you want to do it, it's fine. I want to take a look at the player pool. I'll kind of show a little bit of how it's different. So looking at the player pool itself, you see they're sorted by highest salary to lowest. Right next to that, you have fantasy points per dollar. So this is based on our DFS Army projected points. Notice how that changes. You can shift them over here. But these are based on our fantasy point projection. It's a measure of value. You can sort by value if you like. See, I guess Soon Jae Im is the top projected value on the slate. Next, you have the odds, the win odds for each particular golfer. Lower number is better. That's a higher odds of winning, 1 in 6, 1 in 9, 1 in 16, 1 in 14. I really like to see the win odds on screen because sometimes you can identify, particularly you can identify sort of cheaper players that are sort of slightly better projected in terms of their odds than other ones, although that also does tend to reflect in their projection. But sometimes even when you go really kind of far down this list, you can identify some sort of mispriced golfers that way. Nothing too crazy, but here you got a Nick Taylor at 180 surrounded by 300s and 200s, so that guy stands out a little bit. I actually like using the grading system, the DFS Army grade system, even more so to identify golfers in good spots, especially the cheap ones. So you note here again that you could scroll down pretty far and find, oh, that's not even that far. Let's go really far down and look for some real bigger discrepancies here. Let's see if we can find anyone. Yeah, like right there. I mean, you've got a 62. Again, it reflects in the odds, a 62 in a sea of 40s and 50s. So, you know, a Nick Taylor represents a really, really good value on the slate. 65, 64 amongst all the 50. So these should be some of the slightly better plays. And when you project by grade, those guys will pop up. One thing to note, though, in terms of projecting by grades, we do not grade them if they haven't had enough recent playing time. There's let's see what the formula says here. You need a minimum of 20 shot link rounds to qualify, so some will not be projected. So keep that in mind. You can add an artificial. When you go and project by grades, those ones who get zeros, you would have to add a projection to them if you want to have a shot at using them. Or they actually might go to the excluded list, and you'd have to add a projection to all of these zeros if you want to use them. But most of the time, we want you to generate by points. Those are our custom projections, and use the grades as a guide for your exposures. Now, let's do a run, and I'll show you how to work the exposures box. Now, one of the nice things we have for PGA and for all of our sports is ownership projections. You'll see that number both in the player pool itself, but also right here in your exposures pool. So when you see ownership projections, this gives you an idea of how much exposure the field will have, and you can make your decisions in terms of going above or below field level exposure with these particular golfers. Now I've got one unique on, so I'll add to that a little bit here, but notice that Snedeker, Soon Jae Im, and Adam Hadwin, these guys are showing up massively above their projection. Now, if our projection above their projected ownership, so if our projection system shows this golfer as the top projected player, that's great, but I don't necessarily want to be 100% on any golfer in the tournament, but certainly not one that's projected for only 14% ownership. I better have damn great confidence in him. So a lot of times what I like to do is consider how much above or below the field I want to be on a particular golfer. So with Snedeker, with Sneds, let's say he's projected for 14. He's showing up on 100%. I say that sounds like a lot, but you know what? Let me allow 35% exposure to him. So I could set my exposure max to 35%, and that will limit him to 35% exposure across the 25 lineups I'm creating. Same thing here with Sungjae Im. You know, he's projected for 17%. I might say, you know what? I like him, but I don't like him that much. So, you know, you'll set your number how you see fit. I usually, again, base it on projected ownership. I want to be above that if a player is popping in our projection system, but I don't necessarily want 100%. So I might go, you know, 35% Hadwin, etc., etc. I'm more inclined to allow heavy exposure to golfers that have a decent projection as opposed to somebody in the 50s who is kind of a turd punt play more than somebody that we're expecting to have this great score. So again, we want to limit our exposures to these types of golfers potentially, and you can do that here in the exposures box. Click optimize again. One of the nice things about PGA is it's very straightforward. There's nothing really to stack. There's nothing really to worry about. In that sense, you just run it, set your uniques where you want them, set your max exposures where you want them. Some people try to do something like just set a general max exposure 20% across the board. I'm here to tell you, do not do that. That doesn't work. For a multitude of reasons, you'll just get garbage lineups that way. You're not going to win that way. Please don't do that. Control your max exposures one golfer at a time. I want you to look at who's popping first, allow a run with no restrictions, and then compare the exposure percentage that you're getting to the projected ownership so you can decide how much leverage you want to get on the field with that particular golfer. So with Sungjae Im, again, he's projected for 17. I might say, you know what, I want to leverage the field, but let me get 20% leverage. That means allowing for 37% exposure to this guy. You still have massive leverage to the field, but you're not exclusively exposed to this one golfer. And if he misses the cut, you're dead, etc., etc. Or, you know, golf being such a volatile sport, again, you know, going 100%, very dangerous. You could do it, and I don't mind doing it for one or two golfers, but do it eyes wide open. Understand what you're doing when you do that, and know that you have control over this, complete control. Again, we want you to use the research station, look at the statistics, look at all of the details that we've got going on, the course history, the recent form, the projections, the adjusted implied odds, the aggregated win odds, all of these great stats, and come up with your own player pool that way. That's the best way to work your PGA lineups. DFS Army VIP subscribers also get cheat sheets with core plays from our PGA pros. That's certainly a nice thing. Articles and all of that good stuff. But using the optimizer itself, you can attack these tournaments. When you're ready to download your lineups and upload them to DraftKings, you click download right here, save this file. One of the nice things about the Domination Station is every file that it generates for download is numbered and is sequentially higher, so that lineup will always show up one above. And if we're ready to upload it to DraftKings, you go to lineups, you click on upload, you click on upload CSV, and when you click lineups, generate a lot of these, always scroll all the way to the bottom, and that last one will be the newest one you generated. I've just uploaded 25 lineups. They are not in a contest as of yet. If you want to actually play these lineups, then you would go to the lobby, click on golf, find the contest you want to enter, and right here, enter all. That will put in 25 lineups into this contest. We are done. We have lineups in. Let's make some money. Good luck, everybody. Thanks for watching.